Yahoo! Thank you, John Abbott. You see, my head is a sieve these days. I think we've all been through quite a bit. But anyway, here we are. No worse for wear, we hope. So yes, we are recording. And I think if Jack French is ready for us, let me make him the co-host so he can, I have to go to my other desktop to do that. Let's see, Jack French, make co-host. So Jack, you now have the keys to the kingdom. And I can put you tell me when you're ready for me to bring up your radio picture, but take it away, Jack.
Okay. Tonight we're going to talk about soap operas. Now, for most of us, in order to know the four most popular and most productive soap opera writers, you only have to know four names. And one of them was a couple, and that's Frank and Ann Hummert. They're responsible for over 125 radio shows. Half of them were soap operas. Next runner-up is Erno Williams. Phillips. Erno Phillips was responsible for probably about 17 soap operas, both on radio and on TV. In fact, her Guiding Light a few years ago recently reached the 75th year marker. How remarkable is that? The one we're concentrating on tonight, and after we mute everybody else, I'll continue here, is going to be Elaine Carrington. Elaine Carrington was a very successful novelist, magazine writer, and whatnot. And at age 40, she jumped into the radio scripting of soap operas. She had three extremely popular ones, which you may recall: Rosemary, Pepper Young's Family, and When a Girl Marries. All of them were extremely popular, but certainly Pepper Young's Family was the most popular. In fact, it's the only soap opera that aired 3 times daily during its peak years. Now, it didn't start out as Pepper Young's Family. It started out as Red Adams. And Red Adams was the young kid, and this soap opera revolved around his family. And when Beechnut Gum took over the sponsorship, they didn't want the rival Adams Gum Company to be in this kid's last name. So overnight, Red Adams became Red Davis. This is from 1932, and they changed the name in 33 when the new sponsor came in. And then in 36, Elaine Carrington changed the name to Forever Young, and the family's last name just summarily changed to Young. And the leading character was Pepper Young. Now, the most famous voice of Pepper Young is Mason Adams, but he didn't join the show until 1945, but he was on it for the rest of its run, which was until 1959. But we're going to reach back in history to September 1941 for this one. Now, this is 3 months before Pearl Harbor, and as best I can recall, my mother had a washing machine. And most of the people on my block did. But apparently Procter & Gamble were told by their advertisers that the majority of women were still using a wash tub and a washboard.
Oh boy.
Because this program, this soap opera, September 1941, is sponsored by P&G White Naphtha Bar Soap. And in the introduction, as well as the end, we'll hear the voice of Ed Herlihy, the announcer, telling the women how much better they'll have it if they'll dig into that washboard with the White Naphtha's bar of soap in their hands. Now, like any soap opera, well, we say it's 15 minutes. It's actually 12 minutes because there's a minute and a half at the beginning for the commercial and a minute and a half at the end. And frankly, for most soap operas, the commercial was probably the most interesting thing of interest in the program because in most of them, and this one's included, absolutely nothing happens. This is 12 minutes of a young couple sitting on the hillside, billing and cooing together. Carrington was the only one of the soap opera writers who dictated every word herself. Franklin Hummert, we still got so much chatter on this. I wish these people would mute themselves. Franklin Ann Hummert owned a little.
I will mute everyone and then unmute you, Jack, because I agree. There's some background and it's hard to
I have to
track
apologize
down.
for that.
That's
But Wendy,
fine. Don't worry, Joni.
Wendy, this is Mel.
Jack.
Thank you. The silence is wonderful. Now, Elaine Carrington is the only one that actually dictated every word of every soap opera all by herself. No assistance whatsoever. Frank and Ann Hummert had a factory full of script writers, at one time as many as 35 to 40 people working under them at the typewriters. Erno Phillips usually had a staff writers in the neighborhood of about 6 or 7, but Elaine Carrington did it all. And that means 38,000 words a week that she dictated on these 3 soap operas. And you'll see what her dialogue sounds like in this one, because that's all we've got in this soap opera other than the commercials is dialogue and little crickets chirping. So it's the easiest possible job for a sound man who just drops the record on the cricket sound and goes to sleep for 12 minutes. Let's start off.
Attention! The high diving champion will dive 200 feet into a bucket of water. Hey, where's my cake of the new improved ivory soap? You know it's sudsier in the bath. Dive in. Get richer, creamier lather. Get the new Velvet Suds Ivory Soap. Pepper Young's Family, the true-to-life story of your friends, the Youngs. Brought to you by the makers of P&G Soap, the white naphtha soap that gets clothes really white. The other day, I heard a woman say, "Isn't it a shame that new white linens can't stay white?" Well, you know me. Soon as she said those words, I had to ask her what she meant. And her answer was that her white linens turned yellow after they've been washed and put away on the linen closet shelf. Well, you've guessed it already. That woman doesn't use P&G white naphtha soap. But believe me, when I told her about P&G, she couldn't wait to try it. Because I told her that P&G was a fine, high-quality white soap with an active dirt-loosening ingredient. A combination that brought clothes out just gleaming with snowy whiteness. And then I told her that P&G can't turn white things yellow while they're put away. It brings out towels and sheets and shirts as white as snow, and they stay that way till they're used again. Now, of course, that's no news to you women who know all about P&G, but if there are some of you who don't, I want you to know what a wonderful soap you buy when you get P&G white naphtha. A big bar costs only a few pennies and does an average 100-piece wash. So you needn't let the price stop you. Yes, for just a few pennies, You can buy a bar of soap that's a hard worker from the word go. It really pitches in and helps out on a wash day. No hard scrubbing or boiling with P&G. Those peppy suds foam right up and help loosen all kinds of stubborn dirt. Get the grimiest clothes just sparkling clean. So, look, if you aren't one of the millions of women who enjoy P&G, why don't you try it next wash day? You can't buy a soap that'll give you a cleaner, whiter wash than P&G White Naphtha. It's America's largest selling bar laundry soap. End of summer. End of summer in Elmwood. Tonight in Elmwood, the stars are clear and the moon is making a broad path on the river. There's a cool edge to the air, but Peggy and Carter, strolling towards the river, have no feeling of regret in saying goodbye to summer. They're eagerly looking forward to the fall, to the future, and to all the good things to come. Because Peggy and Carter are together again. Together for good this time. As they walk down Union Street and across the darkened town, only an occasional light showing here and there, Carter explains seriously to Peggy why he would rather give up his kind of world, the life he has always known, than lose her. And Peggy understood. So they're back together again. As they reach their favorite spot, a little hill that looks toward Elmwood on one side and on the other slopes to the river, they stand silently for a moment, caught up in a happiness that neither can find words for. At last, Carter says quietly,
Peggy, let's sit here, huh?
All right, let's.
I'll spread my coat in the ground. Then it won't be too damp for you.
Oh, that's fine, Carter. Thank you. Gee, it is nice here with the river down below.
Mm-hmm. You bet it is. Peggy, darling, you know what I want to do when I get out of the Army?
No. What, Carter?
I'd like to work somewheres around books.
Around books?
Mm-hmm. I'd like that. Perhaps I could work in a bookstore, in a bindery.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what just yet, Peggy, but it's wonderful to think that I can do whatever I want with my life now. That I can plan to work it out the way I want to, with you beside me. Peg, you will be beside me, won't you? You will try to get over the feeling that I'm different from the way I was before you went to Chicago?
Oh, yes, Carter. I'll try.
I don't suppose I'll be worth very much to anybody, at first anyway. Don't suppose I'll be able to pull down more than 25 or 30 bucks a week. Gosh, imagine living on $25 or $30 a week. Peggy, do you think you could do it?
Oh, Carter, I'm sure I could. I don't care how little anybody has or how little we have. I'm sure I could make a go of it if we loved each other.
Peggy, nobody will ever love a girl more than I love you. Nobody will ever love each other as much as we do.
Oh, darling, how nice that sounds.
It's true. But as I was saying, Peg, if I could draw down, well, perhaps 35 bucks a week, we might be able to take a little place. I mean, a house. I'd love to live in a house, wouldn't you?
You know I've always wanted to live in a little house on my own.
Uh-huh. Just a 2x4. Perhaps only a few rooms in it. Gee, Peggy, it'd be wonderful to have you all to myself in that shack.
There are lots of little houses in Elmwood.
Yes, I know it. We could find one of them. I bet even if we look now, right now, long before we're going to get it, we could find just the kind of a house we wanted.
You mean look now? Look at houses?
Wouldn't you like to?
Oh, yes, I'd love to. But it would seem so strange to look for a house for us. For ourselves, I mean.
Yes, but let's do it anyway, huh? On days I can get off, let's just go prowling around and look at houses and pretend. Pretend we're going to take one of them. And perhaps we will someday.
Oh, Carter, I'd just love to live here in Elmwood. Only, darling, it seems so wrong for you to give up so much for me. To give up everything.
Darling, I haven't given up a thing. You know that. I'm getting everything. I'm getting more than any man deserves if I have you, Peggy. If I can make something of myself, start at the bottom and work up, then I'd really have some respect for myself. I wouldn't just be a rich man's son with everything handed to him on a silver platter.
But, Carter, this is such a little town. I doubt if you could find anything you wanted to do in it.
Oh, Peggy, I'm sure I could. Why, I bet I could find a job in the bookstore or something of that kind right here. And, Peggy, I'd like you to be near your folks, right here in Elmwood.
Oh, yes.
If we had a little house somewhere, you could duck in and see your mother and father every day. You could drop in while I was at the office and stay for lunch with your mother. And then come back and get dinner for me.
Oh, Carter.
Oh, gee, Peggy, when I think of coming home nights and walking up a path and opening a front door and finding you there.
Oh, darling, I'd probably be down the path to meet you. I wouldn't let you walk all that way alone.
Oh, darling. You know, it might be too much for you, doing your own housework and everything.
Too much for me? Oh, why, Carter, I'd love to do my own housework. I wouldn't let anybody else touch my house. I wouldn't let anybody else dust a chair or wash a window or iron a dress or even cook a meal. It would have to be all mine, Carter. And I'd want to do every single solitary thing in it. That's what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to have a place to do just what I wanted and not let somebody else come in and pick up and put things away where I wouldn't know where to find them and iron a dress the way I don't like it ironed and cook a dinner the way I don't like it cooked. Because, you know, Carter, I'm an awfully good cook. Really, I am.
Oh, you're an awfully good everything, darling. So, what do you say, Peggy? Shall we go house hunting? Just for the fun of it, on my time off?
Yes, let's.
All right.
Only, darling, don't let's tell anybody. It would sound sort of silly. I mean, it's so remote. The chance of our ever getting married. I mean, for a long, long time. Let's not tell a soul what we're doing.
All right, darling. We'll just kind of poke around till we find a house that you like that's little and tucked away somewhere. Perhaps we might even find a place on the side of a hill. Oh, I'd be crazy about a house on the side of a hill. Wouldn't you, Peggy?
Yes, I would.
I think I could even make up a poem about a house on the side of a hill.
Could you, dear?
Mm-hmm. Like this. If I could live wherever I will, I'd choose a house on the side of a hill.
Oh, Carter, that's lovely. I didn't know you wrote poetry.
I never did till this minute, Peggy, darling. See what you've done? You've made a poet of me, in spite of myself.
Oh, darling, I feel all of a sudden as if you'd come back to me. As if everything was the way it was before.
Peggy, darling, I love you more than anything else in the world. I love you so much that what we've been talking about, being together in a little house, just the two of us, is, well, it's more happiness than any man's got a right to have. I'm going to try to make you the happiest girl in the world.
Carter, I'm so glad we came out here and talked about all this.
So am I. And now, Peggy, I've got to go. I've got to get back to the post. But I'll see you tomorrow night, darling, if I can. And perhaps one day when I can get leave, we can go scouting around and see what houses we can dig up. Come on, I'll walk home with you.
All right, Carter. Only, Carter, I am ashamed of the way I acted in Chicago. I'm still ashamed of the way I ran away.
Oh, forget it. That's all over. That's all in back of us. Just think, Peggy, our whole life's ahead of us. All the beautiful and wonderful things that are going to happen to us. Well, nothing that we've said, nothing that we've done will compare with the things that are going to happen when we're married.
Oh, Carter, I do love you. I love you more now than I ever did.
And I love you more, darling. And I expect to go on loving you more every time I see you. Every time I'm near you, it's just going to mount and mount till I don't know where it'll end. I guess nobody will ever have loved anybody as much as I love you.
The wheel has turned full circle from the shy beginning of love through doubts and uncertainty back to the sureness of their love for each other. Hold fast to that rare and perfect moment. It comes too seldom in a troubled world. You know, I think all you friends of this program must be interested in about the same things. You're interested in our program, in your homes and families, and I'm sure you're interested in getting some real help on wash day. That's why I want you to try our soap, P&G White Naphtha, if you haven't already. Because, friends, when you put a big bar of P&G in your wash tub, you're using a soap that's made to give you a sparkling clean wash without hard scrubbing or boiling. You see, P&G's a fine white soap with an active dirt-loosening ingredient. Now, that combination turns out white things wonderfully white. Colored washables bright and clean, wash after wash. Won't you see for yourself why millions of women count on P&G for real wash day help? A big bar of P&G costs only a few pennies, and that one bar's enough to do an average 100-piece wash. Get several bars today. Tomorrow, the Youngs hear some bad news about their house. Be sure to join Pepper Young's family on Tuesday. This is your announcer, Ed Hurley, for P&G Soap, the white naphtha soap that gets clothes really white.
I have to admit, I was hoping that the crickets would overwhelm these two people and put them out of their misery.
Hey, wait a minute. That was 27 years of great success.
Oh, God.
Thank you, Jack.
Jack,
Yeah.
Jack, this is Edgar. I see that Kathy and McCara, like me, are worried about what's going to happen to their house tomorrow. Can you shed some light on it?
They do eventually get married and they do get their house, yeah. and they are minor characters. Peggy is Pepper Young's sister. So she and Carter are actually secondary characters. It'll go back to Pepper and his problems.
Well, that was a wonderful example of a soap opera. Great stuff. Thank you, Jack. It's really wonderful. So if there are no more comments about the soap opera, then we'll just try to quickly chug through our standard business meeting so that we can get to the meat of the meeting. We have a membership and treasurer's report from Joni Langdon. We have 2 new members who just joined this month, and that brings our paid membership up to 126. We took in $43.81, and we paid $152.37. I believe that has to do with insurance premiums. The balance in our checkbook is still $7,050.67, but please keep in mind that we still owe John Reiser for producing 22 issues of Radio Recall and mailing them, not producing them, but printing them, stuffing envelopes and mailing them off. So once we get that debt finalized, and I know John's been working on pulling his information together, we'll have a much cleaner sense, but I think we're still going to have a pretty healthy balance. So that's membership and treasury. Jim Pasquale, you had mentioned earlier before the meeting began, you were trying to corral some program people. Do you want to give us a quick update on where you stand, if there are months that we need coverage for our meetings? Jim, if you hit *6, I believe that will unmute you. Or maybe he's asleep. Well, we'll get back to that. Our print librarians, Mark and Marcia Bush, I don't think have come in to the call yet, and I don't expect them. They were both diagnosed with COVID recently, even though they're fully vaccinated, and they're among the most careful people I've known during the pandemic. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and drop them a line either over email or whatever. But I don't think there's been any activity with rentals of print materials. So the print library is probably pretty much in the same status it's been in for the last 12 months. Now, audio library, we have both of our librarians on the call tonight. Would either Rebecca or Kathy like to give us a quick update?
There's not much going on. I'm still offloading cassettes. If anybody's interested in CDs, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And I admire the lists, the very comprehensive lists you've come up with and distributed from time to time in an effort to thin the herd, if you will. I think John Abbott.
Myself off mute.
You're off mute and you're just in time. Would you like to give us an update on how we're doing on programming, Jim?
Yes, well, next month, Frank Absher is going to tell us about the Radio Preservation Task Force. And then after that, the calendar is open, and Walden thinks he's going to come up with an interesting interview for us for November. And people can contact me with programs they have in mind, and that's where we're at.
Well, it's wonderful. I admire your ability to, this is one of the benefits of Zoom, of course. I don't have to tell any of you, but we can cast a much wider net in terms of asking people to perhaps share some of their expertise with the club. So that's a really, really great benefit of Zoom, and the fact that this pandemic has gone on so long. John Abbott, I think there's been a lot. John has been a very busy beaver for the last month and a half or so. Do you want to tell us about the website and the Joy Boys and the listserv? And there's all kinds of exciting stuff. John, take it away.
Well, Jack French is not the only one to have access to the great soap operas of the day. We have recently added a collection of one of the all-time soap operas, As the Worm Turns, from the Joy Boys. For those of you who are long-term Washington residents, the Joy Boys were the team of Willard Scott, who unfortunately just passed away last week, and Ed Walker. They were on the radio for some years, doing their best to cause mayhem and dysfunctionality at the FCC with their humor. So through the efforts of Bob Bybee, who maintained the Joy Boys website for many years, he has retired, and the Joy Boys now resides on our website. So if you go to the main page in the lower left-hand corner, there's a little box for the Joy Boys, and it will take you to his site, which is now our site, and you can have insight into all the things that the Joy Boys did, whether it was As the Worm Turns, or WWPU from Sorghum, West Virginia, or The Lone Arranger, or Robin Hood of Rock Creek Park. They're all there, so to give you something to tickle your uvula. On the listserv, there is no answer. As I mentioned last month, I had done some research with another mail serve program, get the same results. Out of the finite audience that I tried to send emails to, several of them did not get the emails, including yours truly. So the only thing that I can offer is two things. Make sure that you have an entry in your contacts for Jim Pasquale. Typically, if you have a contact, your mail program is not going to block emails from those contacts. And also, take the opportunity, some Saturday when you got nothing better to do, and now that we're getting into the fall of the year and it'll start snowing again, you'll have plenty of weekends at home to look through your spam settings and your junk email and clear that stuff out. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are seemingly a million email providers and a million different ways of blocking emails, and we can only do the best that we can do.
The thing I don't understand about that, when I send that email out to the club, I'm surprised that when it lands in your email, I'm surprised it doesn't say that it's coming from vice president at the club. I'm surprised it says it's coming from me, because in a couple months I'm not going to be in this position anymore, and then it's going to be coming from. I thought that was the whole point of having email addresses like vice president at.
Well, yeah, we can do, but unfortunately, I tried a couple of months ago to send out the meeting invitation from the programs at Metropolitan Washington OldTimeRadioClub.com from the web server, and it went into a black hole and has never surfaced. So, I don't know that there's an easy answer to this. I actually called our email provider, and they were doing some things, and they were looking at this and looking at that, and then the next thing I know, they hung up on me. So I don't know what to tell you.
I had some luck. If you know how to get into the settings of your personal email boxes, it's the icon that looks like a wheel, a cog, a wheel.
For those Gmail users, yes, that is true.
Right, for email users. And so I found that that my provider had, in its infinite wisdom, just thrown some random words in there like notification. So I undid all of those, and now I'm getting Jim's emails for whatever reason. And having said that, I probably won't get it next month, but today or this week, I got them both. And as just a kind of a general note to the club, I have not been sending out email blasts because half of you don't get the emails. And so I feel a little frustrated, and I do want to solve this problem in whatever way I can, and I'm not sure I can. But I haven't thrown in the towel yet. So John and I continue to palaver and play and do our things. And John is keeping the website wonderfully up to date and posting the recordings of our meetings in a very, very quick and efficient fashion. So thank you, John, because that's
Keeps my
kind of
weekends
our
busy.
window into the world, if you will. And thank you also to Bob Bybee for, sort of working with you and you two figuring it out, because I was copied on these things and my eyes started crossing because it was so beyond any tech that I was capable of doing. So I'm always happy to defer to the experts.
Yeah, Wendy, one thing that I will just mention that as a Gmail user, your statement is correct. You can go to the little, icon that looks like a gear and set up your settings. Not all email programs have
Right.
that saying, there's 1,000
Yahoo
email
does.
programs and 2,000 ways to diddle with them.
Right, exactly. Yahoo does, and that's my go-to email program. I mean, I have a Gmail account, but it's for the theater company, so I don't use it for personal
Yahoo,
stuff.
a lot of those web-based email programs do that, but not everybody uses the email program. They redirect it to their local desktop, and that adds another level of complexity to it. But we'll keep on trying.
Yes, and thank you, Bob Flood, for suggesting posting to Facebook. I personally don't do social media, but if there's something like that, possibly John and I can palaver. So thank you. We won't go any more into the weeds with email because I'm sure that's not why people signed on tonight to hear us go on about that. Now, wanted to give you a little bit of an update on Mank, because of course we had 2 meetings last month. We had our regular second Friday of August, but then the following weekend we had Mank. And Edgar wrote an original script, a very good original script, and really single-handedly corralled people and got that put up. Martin was amazing because on I believe it was the Tuesday or Wednesday before Mank was to begin, so one day out, the hotel called him and said, we don't have any air conditioning, it's broke, it's going to be broken all weekend long. And so it was a very challenging event to pull off, the convention. And I was struck by how really what good sports people were. I was there, I was honored to be in Edgar's cast. And after being inside for a while, I went out into the 95-degree heat and it felt cool outside. Just to give you an idea of how hideously hot it was. And people did not get grumpy. Linnell was delightful. She was cool as a cucumber at the reception desk when I talked to her. So that was fun. And we had some members, and we actually, I think because Frank Morgan plugged us at the beginning and the end of his presentation, which was right before ours, we had a really quite a respectable turnout for our show and for our club meeting. So that was lovely. The Jack's Payday Candy Bars and Quiz went over very well. And so we pulled it all off. And Edgar, would you like to add anything to that quick Mank report?
Well, yes, thank you, Wendy. Well, actually, first, it was a group effort to make this play happen. And starting with you, with your encouragement to do it, and Martin letting us keep the time slot and also the free admissions for members. And I was honored to have you in our cast. We had a wonderful cast, and I reached beyond Radio Club members because of these challenging times. We had several different organizations contribute, including the New York Gotham radio players. Steve Lewis was in the cast, if you know him, and gave some technical insight. I'm very appreciative to Wendy and her husband, Richard, who were in the play, as well as club members Rob Farr, Frank Morgan, Donna Ring, and Dennis Roma. Mark and Marcia helped out by creating 27 many sound effects that were needed for Miranda's miracle. And they worked under pressure and under short time and health concerns and did a great job. We had really beautiful original music by a composer named F. Munson. So I'm very grateful to him. The good news is that the play was well received, both by the actors, some of whom choked up on the stage, including me, and I wrote it, and our audience. They laughed at the right lines and they looked sad at the right dramatic moments. So I'm very grateful to all of you who participated, including other professional and amateur actors from DC who all came together on a hot Saturday afternoon. So thank you for letting me share that with you all, Wendy.
Well, thank you, Edgar. And Linnell put in chat that the hotel is still hot. So I think that's a place to be avoided like the plague, you know, a shelter in place at home. I have only one more piece of business that I want to share with the club, and then we will go on to the questions for the quiz. I received just yesterday evening a proposed contract from the church, from Trinity Church, covering our potential return to in-person meetings. And a lot of things have changed at the church, not only because of COVID, but because of other policies. And so really, even though Trinity would be very happy to have us back, it's not a viable solution for the club now. Among other things, we won't have any parking because we won't have access to the garage across the street because it's under new ownership. And they're putting in an alarm system. And then the deep cleaning from COVID all make it really nigh on impossible to return there. So I believe we will be continuing on Zoom, I anticipate, at least through the end of the year and possibly even until the spring, because of the uptick in infection, even in this area where the majority of people are already vaccinated. So that's the bonus to us. We have Zoom available, but I would like, to have a committee who is interested in possibly scouting out new places for us to consider when we do get back to in-person meetings. And I'm hoping that, maybe in December, we can actually have a get-together the way we, did a couple of years ago to do our holiday thing. But everything is fluid because of the pandemic situation. So if any of you is interested in, jumping on that committee, shoot me an email or shoot me a message in chat, and we'll get to work on that, because I think we have plenty of time. But the contract is just not something I feel comfortable committing the club to, because I just don't think that it's viable.
Wendy, should we go forward then and adjust our meeting page on the website to say that for the foreseeable future, it'll be web only?
I think that's a very reasonable step to take, John. Yes, thank you for the
working me to
suggestion.
death this weekend.
I know. He's been working his fingers to the bone for the last 2 months. So I mean, they're down to nubs. Pretty soon he'll only have knuckles. So thank you. Yes, this is great stuff. Now we have a quiz courtesy of our own Frank Morgan. Thank you, Frank. So let me make Sally Stevens our co-host because her delivery of this is second to none. Let me see. I'm gonna have to do it on here. All right, Sally, you're up.
Okay.
And would everyone please mute except for Sally? Otherwise, you know, I have the button. I can make it happen. As
We have
can
the
Sally.
power. The power. All right. I can't believe it is already September and we have a new quiz. Courtesy Frank Morgan. Frank, I printed it today. I haven't looked at it. It was very tempting, but I have not. This is your chance to get your pencils and papers ready, children. It's time for a quiz. I hope you studied well. Excellent. I see Wendy's prepared. I see Robert's prepared. I like how they have their materials out on the desk. Thank you, John. I'm glad you have your pencil. Oh, excellent, John. Very nice. The class is learning very well. If you don't know already, I'm an elementary school teacher in my other life. I'm going to launch the poll momentarily. You may move faster than I will read. I will read the question and all of the answers. Probably once. They are a little longer, but I will try and read slowly and clearly. I actually read a spelling test like that today, not intentionally. And I got about halfway through and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to stop. I have to change this up. All right, launching the poll now. Number 1. Joan Bennett was the scheduled guest star on the Lux Radio Theater. She was unable to appear and replaced at the last moment by Ruth Hussey. Help. Why was Joan Bennett unable to appear? A. Heavy rains had washed out the road from her home to the main highway. B. She had a sudden attack of severe flatulence. Too much Kellogg's Pep, perhaps? C. Her house had burned to the ground. D. Her son had an emergency appendectomy. Why was Joan Bennett unable to appear as the scheduled guest star on the Lux Radio Theater? Number 2. When Jack Benny was forced by illness to miss several programs, which of his friends stepped in to guest host the show? A. Groucho Marx. B. Herbert Marshall. C. George Burns. D. Orson Welles. Number 3. William Conrad played a detective on television, but in April 1950, he filled in for the lead on which detective series? A. The Adventures of Sam Spade. B. The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. C. Richard Diamond, Private Detective. D. The Casebook of Gregory Hood. Number 4. After assuming the role of the Lone Ranger, Grace Beamer missed only one show over the next decade plus. What legendary announcer filled in for him? A. Roy Rowan. B. Harlow Wilcox. C. Fred Foy. D. Hal Gibney. Number 5. The Candy Tooth Caper was an adventure of Sam Spade two-parter. The script was originally written to be a movie sequel to The Maltese Falcon. Who filled in as Sam's secretary Effie for Lorraine Tuttle, who was unavailable? It wasn't the first time she did so. That was a hint. Oh, Frank. A. You did it to me on purpose. I'm really bad with this name. B. Bay. Benaderet. You did this on purpose. Yes, I see him nodding. I am breaking character. Frank did this on purpose because this name, I hope it's the wrong answer. If it is the right one, I don't know yet. B with the impossible name.
B. Benaderet.
Thank you. I still don't like that name. I'm still going to mess it up every time. That one. B. Sandra Gould. C. Shirley Mitchell. D. Peggy Weber. Number 6. Bill Stern's sports newsreel often had celebrity guests. One evening, a former guest famously filled in for the absent Stern. Who was the pinch hitter? A. Joe DiMaggio. B. Frank Sinatra. C. Bing Crosby. D. Ted Williams. Number 7. Howard McNear had a very recognizable voice. He missed playing Doc Adams on a couple of Gunsmoke episodes. Which of the following voice actors stepped in and did a rather poor imitation? A. Alan Reed. B. Bill Thompson. C. Paul Frees. D. Mel Blanc. Number 8. Cecil B Demille once did a Lux Radio Theater studio broadcast while on a stretcher. The first time an illness kept him from the studio, this actor, known for his radio role of Mr. President, filled in for a couple of weeks. Who was it? A. Edward Arnold. B. Walter Houston. C. John M. Kennedy. D. Herbert Marshall. Number 9. My friend Irma was red hot when Kathy Lewis's illness forced the need for a sub for several weeks. Which Joan stepped into the fire? A. Joan Alexander. B. Joan d'Arc. C. Joan Banks. D. Joan Davis. Number 10. In May 1948, just as the curtain for Lux Radio Theater was rising, a young actor who died too young had to replace the scheduled lead, Burt Lancaster, who had lost track of time and arrived late. Who was Lancaster's fill-in? A. James Dean, died age 24. B. Sal Mineo, died age 37. C. Steve McQueen, died age 30. D. Jeff Chandler, died age 42. It looks like several of us are getting our answers in online. I will leave the poll running. I will not end it. I will just close that little window. There we go. So you may continue to enter your answers on the poll if you so choose, or have your pencils and papers handy for when we grade the quiz. And hopefully I won't have to pronounce that name that just won't stick in my brain. I just see too many E's and A's and, oh, Frank, good quiz. I am anxious to see the answers. I feel like I really need to read a book or two. Okay, that should have given you all enough time to have finished your questions, and I turn it over to our president for our main program.
Thank you very much, Sally. Your delivery was spot on as always. So now we get to the main event, and particular thanks to Frank Morgan and Jack French, who have stepped in at the last minute to assure that we would have a program as advertised, focused on straight arrow. So I turn the meeting over to Jack and to Frank. They're kind of doing a tandem thing, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to look, but I think it's going to be very interesting. Frank has been working hard on putting together a PowerPoint presentation. So Frank, you're there, yes? Let's see, Frank, yeah. So Frank and Jack, are you, here we go, yay, thank you. I will mute myself.
Where the heck are they? All right, let me ask, can everybody see? Good, thank you. Waiting for Jack.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, when you're ready, Jack.
Tonight, we're going to feature the popular but short-lived kids juvenile series Straight Arrow. The only radio series that featured a Native American Indian in the lead. Obviously, there were many sidekicks. Tonto, of course, the Lone Ranger, Little Beaver to Red Rider, and Harka to Bobby Benson. But this was a Native American Indian, Comanche tribe, who was the lead in the show. And let's start with the one of the openings here, Frank.
Great. I've got to get rid of people on my screen here because that's where the audio is underneath them as well. Now, back.
If you hit the minus sign, Frank, in the corner of the little thumbnails, they'll kind of disappear usually.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You know where your picture is showing?
Yes.
Do you see a plus and a minus at the top? The plus in the left-hand corner and the minus in the right?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Shoot. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Maybe I can figure this out here. Now I've moved them. That's good. All right, now we're set. There we go. All right.
Frank, it looks like there's something wrong with the link to your audio file because it says it cannot play the media.
Well, it did that to me earlier today when I was trying it out, and it does ultimately play. I hate this. Darn it. There we go.
Fixed on a flying target. arrow set against a rawhide string. A strong bow bent almost to the breaking point, and then straight arrow. Nabisco Shredded Wheat presents Straight Arrow, a new thrilling adventure story from the exciting days of the Old West. To friends and neighbors alike, Steve Adams appeared to be nothing more than the young owner of the Broken Bow cattle spread. But when danger threatened innocent people, and when evildoers plotted against justice, then Steve Adams' rancher disappeared. In his place came a mysterious stalwart Indian, wearing the dress and war paint of a Comanche, riding the great golden Palomino, galloping out of the darkness to take up the cause of law and order throughout the West, comes the legendary figure of Straight Arrow. Boys and girls, how would you like to own a beautiful golden Palomino colt? The son of the mighty horse Straight Arrow rides on our new radio program. You might be the very one to win, and we'll tell you more about it later in the program. First, a word to the boys. Are you high man on your baseball team? And you girls, are you always leading the race when you're roller skating with your gang? If you want to be in front all the time, you need plenty of energy. Energy spelled Nabisco for Nabisco Shredded Wheat. Yep, a big bowl full of Nabisco Shredded Wheat for breakfast, plus plenty of fruit and milk, will not only start you off right, it will help give you a head start on the other kids. Because Nabisco Shredded Wheat is made from real whole wheat. And believe me, that means real energy in every spoonful. Tell Mother you want to keep ahead of the crowd. Ask her to get a box of Nabisco Shredded Wheat today. And now, Straight Arrow. Sawbuck stage line between Flint Rock and Calvados runs along the flat prairie, then through a steep cut in the Sangre Cristos Mountains. The mountain road begins only a dozen miles from the ranch house of the Broken Bow cattle spread. It's a hot afternoon. Steve Adams, owner of the Broken Bow, and his friend Packy are out hunting strays. As they come around a jutting shoulder of rock, Steve Adams calls a halt. His keen, dark Indian eyes under the brim of his Stetson sweeping over the buffalo grass and the foothills of the Sangre Cristos.
No sign of those strays around here, Packy. Reckon they must have drifted some other direction. Can't see hide nor hair of them.
You can't, eh? Now, Steve, you mean a scrunchy old placer miner like me's got better eyes than Straight Arrow?
Packy, I told you dozens of times, don't call me by that handle.
Why not? That's who you are right now, Straight Arrow. The mysterious Comanche Indian that rides that big Palomino horse.
I'm not riding him now. As far as everybody's concerned, I'm just plain Steve Adams, cattleman.
Everybody except me, Steve. But don't fret, I only called you Straight Arrow when we were alone.
All right, Packy, never mind. You were saying something about my eyes.
Yep, sure was. I spotted a cloud of dust that you didn't. See it yonder up there in the foothills?
I saw it a long while ago, Packy.
You did?
Yep, and it's not our strays. It's a sawbuck stage for Calvados. That dust is moving right above where the trail ought to be.
Ah, shucks. And I figured for once I'd outsmarted you. Yep, it's a stage right now.
We can't see it, just the dust, but... Packy.
Huh? What's biting you, Steve?
It stopped.
Well, what if it has? Maybe it sprung axle or broke a trace or...
Yeah, Packy. What stopped that stagecoach is a holdup. Come on, prod up your pony. We gotta get there pronto. Yeah, full time.
Okay. Now, for those of you that are a little bit familiar with the program or listened to it as you were kids like I did, you probably are missing something at the beginning. And so would the Nabisco company be missing it if we didn't have the Nabisco commercial, which opened every show. Can you play that for us, Frank?
Nabisco is the name to know. For a breakfast you can't beat.
Try Nabisco shredded wheat.
There we go. Now, the show started out actually in 1947. The McCann Agency, which was the advertising agency for Nabisco shredded wheat, was tasked with the task of creating a new radio show for kids. Nabisco was a little bit jealous probably of General Mills and Kellogg's and Post and Quaker Oats, who had all these kid shows, and Nabisco didn't have one. So McCann Agency created it. Show went on the air on the Don Lee network on the West Coast only in 1948. They had recruited Sheldon Stark to write the scripts, and he couldn't have been better at the job. He was a veteran of WXYZ, and he had written for Challenge of the Yukon and other Western shows out of WXYZ. The picture we've got here is Howard Culver. That's not what he looked like on radio, obviously. That's what? That's the TV one of Gunsmoke. Is that him? Is the...
No, that's further down.
Okay. No, but this looks like the disguise he had. Anyway, now there's one of the most difficult old-time radio errors to get rid of is what was the true nationality of Straight Arrow Steve Adams. And even a astute scholar like John Dunning got it wrong in his first book, Tune In Yesterday, where he said that Steve Adams was a white man who disguised himself as an Indian and became Straight Arrow. When in reality, of course, it's exactly reversed. The secret identity of Straight Arrow, a full-blooded Comanche, was the rancher, supposedly white, of Steve Adams. And in deference to John, we'll admit that he did get it right in his second book, The Old Time Radio Digest. But that does confuse some people. After approximately a year on the Don Lee network, Mutual picked it up in 1949. And these are the two people who were the leads. Howard Culver, in that role as Straight Arrow and Steve Adams, used the same technique that Bud Collyer did when he was doing Superman and Clark Kent. There'd be a lowering of voice when he becomes the hero. This looks like a job for Superman. And Howard Culver did the same thing. He dropped his voice for Straight Arrow. It must have been confusing, however, when we have two guys at the microphone, both named Howard. And the director in the radio booth says, Howard, cut your last line. So is he Howard Culver or Fred Howard? Now, this was the same confusion in the Tom Mix program when we had Curly Bradley playing Tom Mix and Leo Curley playing his sidekick, Mike Shaw. When he'd say, Curly, cut your last line, is he referring to Tom Mix or to Mike Shaw? But anyway, they did a great job together. Howard as Straight Arrow and Fred Howard as Packy McLeod. There's one other character in this tiny ranch that they ran, the Broken Bow Ranch, and that's Mesquite Molly. Gwen Delano played that role, but she didn't really have much to do. After all, nothing happened on the ranch. Everything was excitement and crime away from it. So they were away from the ranch most of the time, and she was alone away from the microphone. The other thing that we're supposed to believe is that Packy McLeod, as you heard in that last episode, is the only one who knows that Steve Adams is really Straight Arrow. And if they believe that Mesquite Molly never caught on after a couple of months in that ranch house, you've got a better knowledge than I do on that thing. Okay, let's move to the next picture, please. Now this one has a personal connection to me. The guy in the center in the green jacket is my father, Arliss French. who ran a major supermarket in the tiny town of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. And he was a master at finding publicity for his store. He knew about the initial success of Straight Arrow on the radio because we told him about it, we as kids, as well as the neighborhood kids. So he called up the local radio station. We only had one radio station, WOBT, and it was a mutual affiliate. And he said, I've just created the largest Nabisco display in northern Wisconsin, and I think you ought to come out and talk to me about it. And they were interested in publicizing the show too. My dad had got the cardboard cutout of Straight Arrow as part of it, and he ordered, I don't know, 20 cases of Nabisco shredded wheat. And in this picture, you'll see the announcer with his script interviewing my dad, and hiding behind the Nabisco shredded wheat is the studio engineer. The program interview style lasted 15 minutes, and the station actually broadcast it live, which was a great commercial for both Straight Arrow and Nabisco. And Dad had also invited the local press over. They sent a photographer and a reporter, took this picture, and this picture appeared in the local newspaper the next day. So a big success in all respects. Okay, the show and for the majority of the time it was on the air, and that's approximately 2 years, alternated with Bobby Benson, both mutual shows. If Straight Arrow was on the air for 3 days in the week, then Bobby Benson did the other 2, and then vice versa. And what we have for you next is not Clark Kent running into a phone booth to change into Superman. It's Steve Adams running into the Cave of Gold, where he keeps his horse and all his Indian weapons and regalia, and changes into Straight Arrow. Go ahead, Frank.
Don't do it to me again.
The sooner we get to Sundown Valley, the better. Sundown Valley? Steve, do you mean? Yes, Becky. Sundown Valley in the hidden cave. It's time for me to hit the trail as Straight Arrow.
A short distance from the Broken Bow cattle spread lay Sundown Valley, and in it, a weather-beaten mine shack which stood at the entrance to an apparently deserted mine shaft. The mine shaft is not deserted. Within, through a secret entrance known only to Steve Adams and Packy, lies a vast subterranean cave. The walls of the cave glitter with crystal gold. From some sparkles comes light that spreads a shimmering flame everywhere. As the two men, a great old Palomino tosses his head and whinnies. Steady, big horse. Magic arrows hang on the wall. There's magic war paint and magic garb. Quickly, Steve Adams changes, and in a moment,
Steady, great stallion, steady. Stand ready. This is your master who speaks. This is Straight Arrow.
a clatter of hoofs in the vast vaulted cave, an Indian war whoop that rings from the glittering rock. Out into the night gallops the great golden Palomino, and riding bareback, clad in Indian garb, Straight Arrow on the trail of justice.
Now that scene was obviously in every show, and just like Clark Kent had to change into Superman, Steve Adams had to change into Straight Arrow. The sound effects in this program were exceptionally good for a kids program because it had the esteemed sound man Ray Kemper. He was then the sound effects man at KHJ in Los Angeles, where the show was produced. And Ray Kemper, you'll know, was part of that team that went on to do the great sound effects in Gunsmoke and Voyage of the Scarlet Queen, etc. So I was in correspondence with Ray Kemper shortly before he died and asked him about the sound effects on Straight Arrow. And he said, well, a lot of the sound effects were, of course, the great horse Fury. And so we had the coconut shells, and I worked in a terrain box. It was approximately 4 feet in length and 1 feet in width, and it contained 4 compartments. One was ordinary dirt for the prairie sounds. One was gravel when they were on the mountain trails. One was water if they forded a stream. And another one was brush and straw crumpled up. And then, of course, if we had to go across a covered bridge, they used the side of the box, the wood sound. And I said, well, what about the sound in the mine when Fury and Straight Arrow ride out of that? And he said, oh, we brought in a cinder block for that. And it would be on the cinder block for a while and then transfer to the regular terrain. The Nabisco Company, of course, was extremely interested in promoting this show, not just on the air, but on their cereal boxes. And so in each cereal box, you would find a Ingenuity card. This Ingenuity card was the same size as the box of cereal. There were 3 in them to separate the 9 sections of the shredded wheat. Now, at that time, they were not little bite-sized ones like they are today. They were quite large, like a hoagie almost, and they were stiff as a bale of hay. My mother would serve it to us only after boiling water on it and then milk and sugar, because you could barely eat it. It would choke you to death. It was a horrible cereal. So the Ingenuity cards were in each. You got 3. And to promote it even farther, there was the famous wall chart that Nabisco advertised in comic books and newspapers, whatever. And in this one, the deal was, we will send you a wall chart of the 12 Ingenuity cards, but you have to certify that you already have 12 Ingenuity cards. And you were encouraged to combine this with maybe the boys in your Cub Scout group or your Boy Scout group, and you signed a coupon saying, we have 12 Ingenuity cards, please send us the chart, and it cost you 25 cents. And I'm sure a lot of them got into that. We've got some other Nabisco mail-in premiums with the pricing that Frank found. Now the headband, of course, for the very earliest was the box top only, and quite quickly we got into sending some money in. And although it doesn't put box top along with those amounts, you can rest assured you had to have a Nabisco shredded wheat box top along with your coins, and you can get the old time radio premiums there. They didn't produce nearly as much. The show wasn't on the air that long. It wasn't like Tom Mix that had a stagecoach full of them, but they were very well and highly regarded by the kids that sent away from them. I didn't send away for them because they would just be my brothers and I fighting over the premium. So we didn't have that.
Jack,
yeah.
maybe you would want to read some of those premiums for the people who are on the telephone.
Absolutely. The first one is 1948-49, the red feather headband. Contained 2 feathers because that's the same as Straight Arrow was pictured as. Got that for a box top. Then we got the war drum and the beater from 49. That was 25 cents in a box top. And of course, we heard the imitation of the war drum at the beginning of the Nabisco commercial, although it was a bump from the organ, not from a real drum. Then for those that wore a tie, there was a golden arrow tie clasp, only 15 cents and a box top. And you could get a bandana with a golden slide ring that had straight arrow on it, and a straight arrow ring called the golden face ring. And then a mystic wrist kit, which included a arrowhead and a cowrie shell. That was 20 cents in a box top. There was a tribal patch, about 3.5 inches in diameter, for only 10 cents in a box top. A golden nugget cave ring, that's 1951. That was 25 cents in a box top. Then there was a light arrowhead, which was a tiny little arrowhead that actually had a light in it with a teensy battery, and it was kind of a little flashlight for you. And then the engine utility manual was the reprints of the first 2 books. There were a total of 72 Ingenuity cards, and some of them were brought out in book form like that. Okay, how about the comic book? Now, the comic book came out in 1950 and went through several editions through 1956, which is strange because Straight Arrow was off the air in 51, and the comic books continued for another 5 years. There was also a daily newspaper strip in over 200 newspapers featuring Straight Arrow. And that didn't last as long, but it was about a little over a year, from the middle of 50 to the middle of 51. And most of those comic books now are available, of course, on the internet for anybody that wants to accumulate some. And now we go to Howard Culver and his TV career. Yeah, as I predicted to you earlier, this was the attire that he wore as the hotel innkeeper on Gunsmoke, the TV version. Now, when Straight Arrow ended in 1951, Culver walked down the street and into the audition for Mercedes McCambridge's brand new radio show called Defense Attorney, which turns out to be one of the crime solvers in my book of Private Eyelashes. Howard won the audition, and for the next 2 years, he was the girlfriend, he was the boyfriend and the assistant almost of Mercedes McCambridge, who would send him on errands to check something so she could solve a case. I played a character named Judd Barnes, who was supposed to be a newspaper reporter, but he spent all his time taking care of Mercedes McCambridge's needs as a defense attorney. After his radio career ended, as many of them did in the early 50s when everything switched to television, he switched to television too. They let him use his own name on this show. He was Howie, the house manager of the hotel, but he was in many minor roles in almost all of the Westerns on TV until he retired. Next thing is we've got the ultimate book on Straight Arrow, written by William Harper. Bill was the leader of the Straight Arrow fan club for several years. He put out a newsletter called Powwow for about 15 years, from 86 to 2001. His book is the ultimate in anything you would want to know about the Straight Arrow program. Sadly, Howard Culver died at a relatively early age. He and his wife Lois were on a 3-week cruise to Asia, And on the return trip, he contracted some serious infection, which the ship's doctor could not take care of, and he died on the ship. He was actually buried at sea. This was August of 1984. He was only 66 years old. The program was always done live, with the exception of when Howard Culver had some personal appearance as Straight Arrow, and he had a number of them. And during those times, they would record the program. So we have very few of them. When I started researching this show 20 years ago, there were only about 6 or 8 copies. Frank's research ensures me that we're up to 15 or 20 now?
14 or 15.
14 or 15 shows. So, and those would be ones in which they were recorded only because Howard Culver wasn't available. So that concludes our presentation here. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that just like the comic book carried the Straight Arrow image for another 5 years after the radio show ended, Nabisco continued to advertise the Straight Arrow on the cereal boxes after the show was over. And since television became big in the early 50s, they created a marketable cereal box which had Nabisco on the front and an outline of a television set on the back. And inside, instead of the Ingenuity cards, they gave you little tiny finger puppets. They were made of paper, and you made a little circle of them, stuck them on your fingers. And then you cut out the screen in the Nabisco box. So you had this tiny little television set, and you could amaze your parents and your friends by putting on a show. And they only had the heads to go on your fingers. So there was Straight Arrow and Packy and Mesquite Molly and some of the villains and other people. And you sort of made up your own script and did a little Straight Arrow on television, which is the only time that Straight Arrow did make it to television. So that's it for the Frank and Jack show for tonight.
Thank you, Frank and Jack. That was really impressive, pulling that together in such a short amount of time. Thank you. Thank you both.
If I can just say, when, working with Jack was a joy. And, when I started to scramble to figure out Straight Arrow, I went to Dunning and there wasn't much there. I went online, and lo and behold, the best thing online that I could find was an essay that Jack did on Straight Arrow in 1996, which provided me with a ton of information so that I could look up some other stuff. And just real quickly, I thought it was really funny. I tried to search premiums for Straight Arrow, couldn't find it. Where I found that list of premiums was on a website called iloveshreddedwheat.com. And it's just amazing if you look around what you can find. So Jack, thank you. I enjoyed working with you, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Frank. You did all the work. I'm just babbling.
And a wonderful program. Does anyone have any questions for either Jack or Frank? Musings or curiosities or what have you?
Well, if I can then, Jack, if you don't mind, one thing that I found out, those Ingenuity cards, the show was broadcast in Canada, so that Nabisco kindly put cards in both French and English in the boxes of shredded wheat in Canada, so that the French Canadians could also enjoy the Ingenuity cards.
Oh my gosh, that's remarkable. I didn't know that. Great.
Yep.
That is just wonderful. Thank you so much. For those of you on the phone, if you're on mute and you want to ask a question, just hit *6 and you will not be mute anymore. At least that's the theory.
One of our attendees has asked the status of Lois Culver. I know that she was a contributor to Charles's newsletter for some years, but does Jack or anyone know about the status of Lois Culver?
I do not, and she was a remarkable lady who immersed herself in old time radio during all of Howard's career. And I was in contact with her when I was writing Private Eyelashes, and she gave me some valuable insights into defense attorney, because she went to record these programs, rehearse these programs with Howard, with Mercedes McCambridge. And she filled me in on a lot of details on how that went, including the fact that after every performance, Mercedes would lead them out to the nearest ice cream shop. And I asked her, I said, "You're kidding, right?" And she said, "No, Mercedes McCambridge did not consume alcohol. She did in later life have a drug problem, but she didn't consume alcohol. And she would drag the cast and crew to the ice cream shop for malted milks."
If it's the same, this is George. If it's the same Lois that I'm remembering, she used to have a online OTR chat on, I think, Thursday nights, where many people would come. And
Yes, that is the same one. That's the lowest.
she was definitely a wonderful, caring person to everyone. And it would be nice to let her be aware, if anybody has a way to contact her, that she's not forgotten, because she's done so much, and even maybe even a link to this might be encouragement to her.
Yeah, maybe somebody from Sportback would know if she's still alive and reachable.
It's been many years, and she may not, I'm hoping she is still with us, and, but it would be nice to remember her after all she's done for everyone.
That's a wonderful thought, George. Thank you. Let's see, is it Jim Pasquale who has his hand up to ask a question? No, Jim doesn't have his hand up. So the telephone 908.
That's me.
Would
Joni.
you like to ask a question, Joni?
Well, I want to say that Zoom abruptly ended my call just as I was listening. I got in, but I didn't hear the very end of what was said. But I must say that I loved Straight Arrow, and I guess I was, well, if it started in '49, I was 9, and I thought it was a good show. I don't remember any of the premiums, but I love Howard Culver's voice, and the whole thing was really, really good. And your presentation was so wonderful, guys. I just, this is my kind of stuff. I am such an OTR junkie and listened to so much of it and still do. So I want to thank you again for allowing us to be in this club, and I just can't tell you how much I love it.
Well, we are honored to have you as a member of the club, Joni. And John Abbott will be posting, we're recording all of this. So, you'll be able to perhaps hook up online to hear the end of the program. I hear what you missed. I'm sorry Zoom kicked you out.
Wendy?
Well, that's Zoom for you.
Yep. Yes,
you never
Frank.
know what it's going to
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one other thing. In that first audio that I played, he mentioned about the winning the Golden Palomino. That was the first premium that they gave away. Later on in the show, what they talk about is you sent in the name. The horse didn't have a name in that first episode, and the horse was named by the winner of the Golden Palomino that was supposedly the son of, the name chosen was Fury.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Frank.
Also, another thing, there was a recording. I think some people were, I don't know if people were angry and they sort of did a kind of a spoof on Straight Arrow. I don't know exactly what, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was recorded. And the shredded wheat commercial, instead of try Nabisco shredded wheat, which was the line that I remembered, they said eat Nabisco shredded wheat. But I never liked shredded wheat. I hated it when I was a kid, so we didn't really get it very much in our family. So, but thanks again.
Thank you. And Glenn Brownstein has found an obituary for Lois.
Ooh.
And there's a link to that obituary from 2011 in the chat. So you can tap on that and go to it if you wish.
I'm not, no.
So any other questions, curiosities, observations? Oh, you're getting a virtual round of applause, gentlemen, for your fine work tonight. Thank you so much. And now I know you've all been bending with curiosity to know the answers to the quiz. And so I will pass the baton on to our own Sally Stevens and her computer to give us the answers.
I'm back. All right. So this poll has been running. Looks like a few more of you have participated. This is your last opportunity to enter into the poll on the screen if you choose to do so. Otherwise, I hope you have your quizzes. I won't make you get your red pens and pencils out, and I can't make you trade your papers with your neighbor, but you have to sign the Pledge of Honesty at the end. Clearly. All
Can
right.
you roll the results from the poll, Sally?
Yep, I'm just giving the last second in case, and I'm ending the poll.
Oh.
And can you see the results? Great.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So number one, Joan Bennett was supposed to show up on the Lux Radio Theater, but she couldn't. Why? Was it A, heavy rains washed out the road from her home to the main highway? Well, several of us thought so. Could it be B, she had a sudden attack of severe flatulence? Have taking too much Kellogg's Pep? Well, somebody thought so. I mean, it's possible. Could it have been C, her house had been burned to the ground? Or D, her son had an emergency appendectomy? We are all over the board. Let's pull out my answer sheet. And, oh, this is sad. The answer is C, her house burned to the ground. Well, that's a bummer. Now I feel bad for Joan Bennett that her house burned to the ground, and I hope she Number two. Jack Benny was forced by illness to miss several of his programs. I bet he still got paid, though. Which of his friends stepped in to guest host the show? Was it A, Groucho Marx, B, Herbert Marshall, C, George Burns, or D, Orson Welles? Well, the majority of us online thought George Burns with a close second to Orson Welles. A few of us picked Groucho and Herbert Marshall. The correct answer is D, Orson Welles. I bet those are some interesting episodes. I don't think I've heard any of those. So I would love to hear Orson Welles with Phil Harris. I mean, that's got to be wacky. So the correct answer is D, in case you missed the letter. Number 3, William Conrad played a detective on television, but who did he fill in for in April of 1950? Was it A, Sam Spade, B, Philip Marlowe, C, Richard Diamond, or D, Gregory Hood? Ooh, we were kind of split between Marlowe and Hood. A few said Richard Diamond, a few said Sam Spade. The correct answer is, congratulations, the 6 of you that selected Philip Marlowe, B, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. I don't think he could have done Richard Diamond unless he could whistle. I don't know. William Conrad doesn't seem like the whistling kind of guy to me. Can he play the piano? No. Just saying. Number 4, after assuming the role of the Lone Ranger, Grace Beamer missed only one show. Which announcer filled in for him? Nobody guessed A on here, Roy Rowan. A few of us said B, Harlow Wilcox. The majority said C, Fred Foy. And one person said D, Hal Gibney. The correct answer is, good job, majority, C, Fred Foy filled in. So far, Frank, I'm batting 1,000. I better do my homework for the next time. Number 5, the Candy Tooth Caper. Notice that the Candy Tooth candy is with a K here. Seems very sneaky. Candy Tooth Caper was an adventure of Sam Spade 2-parter that was supposed to be a sequel to the Maltese Falcon, but who filled in as Sam's secretary, Effie? And it was not the first time that she had done this. Well, a bunch of you picked that person, the 2 B's, BB. Ooh, BB. That's her new name for me. BB. Few of you picked B, Sandra Gould. One of you said Shirley Mitchell. And a few said D, Peggy Weber. We were all over the place here. Out of principle, I did not select BB because that name just trips me up. The correct answer is, nice job to the 4 of you that selected B, Sandra Gould. She filled in as Effie. Good job, Jack. For Lorraine Tuttle. I'm glad it wasn't BB and Frank. Just saying. Just saying. I know what you did there. Number 6. Bill Stern's sports newsreel often had celebrity guests. And one evening, a former guest filled in for him when he was absent. Who was the pinch hitter? I feel like that might have been a clue, but I don't know. We'll see. Could it have been A, Joe DiMaggio, B, Frank Sinatra? Did he play baseball? C, Bing Crosby, also baseball? Or D, Ted Williams? Let's find out. The correct answer is, well, that was tricky. Oh, Frank, this is masterful and infuriating. The answer is B, Frank Sinatra. Good job, the 2 of you that knew that. Or if you took a wild guess, excellent job. Frank Sinatra was the pinch hitter. Now I also want to know if he played baseball and where. And if he was a pinch hitter. Number 7. Howard McNear had a very recognizable voice. He missed playing Doc Adams on a couple of Gunsmoke episodes, but who stepped in and apparently did a really, really bad job? Was it A, Alan Reed? A few of us said yes. Was it B, Bill Thompson? A few said yes. The majority said C, Paul Frees. Nobody picked Mel Blanc, maybe because it said it was a poor imitation. And well done, majority. The correct answer is C, Paul Frees. So sorry, Paul. Should have done better. Number 8. Cecil B Demille. This is a very interesting fact. Once did a Lux Radio Theater studio broadcast while on a stretcher. There's a whole presentation on that. I'm just saying, I want to know what happened, why he was on that stretcher, and how that whole show went down. But that sounds pretty ridiculous and exciting. But the first time that he actually couldn't show up was due to an illness. And who filled in for him for a couple of weeks? Was it A, Edward Arnold? A bunch of us thought so. One thought it might be B, Walter Houston. Nobody on the poll went for C, John M. Kennedy. And several of us went for D, Herbert Marshall. The correct answer is, dun, 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 dun. Nice job, majority. A, Edward Arnold. Edward Arnold. Okay. Number 9. My friend Irma was red hot when Kathy Lewis's illness forced the need for a sub. Which Joan stepped into the fire? I think I did lose this. I lost it. This was good. This was good, Frank. Which Joan was it? Joan d'Arc. Could it be Joan Alexander, Joan d'Arc, Joan Banks, or Joan Davis? We were all over the place, and this one, the correct answer is C, Joan Banks. Joan Banks. Hopefully she wasn't at Joan Bennett's house when it went up in flames. Just saying. A lot of Jones. Final question. In May 1948, just as Lux Radio was starting, a young actor had to replace the lead, Burt Lancaster, who lost track of time and arrived late. Divas. Who was his fill-in? This young star that died too early. Was it A, James Dean, B, Sal Mineo, C, Steve McQueen? Nobody selected him on the poll. Or D, Jeff Chandler? I finally got one right. The correct answer is D, Jeff Chandler. Wow. This was an excellent quiz, Frank. I don't normally expect to get many right anyway, but this was especially thought-provoking and well written, very well written, very enjoyable. So there you are.
Excellently well done. Excellent. Thank you, thank you, Frank. Do you need to defend any of your answers? Is anyone challenging you? I probably wouldn't dare. But it was really delightful, and it was fun to hear Sally struggle with BB. So I have a feeling that our quiz masters are going to work her name into just about every subsequent poll answer just for fun. I do know that she played a small role on the Beverly Hillbillies, actually, on television. Anyhow.
I think Sally ought to do a presentation on B. Benaderet.
I just can't. I just, out of
principle.
Yeah. I was
Sally
gonna
had
say
very
spite,
strong
but you know, she's spiting me with her frustrating name.
I believe she
Right.
was also on Petticoat Junction as well.
Yeah.
And she was also the operator on the Jack Benny show, radio show.
Yeah, she was one of the
Yeah.
telephone operators.
Yeah, she really got around. She was quite something. Sally, thank you as always. You
my
do
pleasure.
understand the second Friday of every month, you are required to be with us. And you can run, but you can't hide because Zoom is with you all the time. Oh, she's hiding now. That lot of good that'll
You
do.
can't see me.
Okay, so here we are. So I will go ahead if no one has any other observations, questions, or curiosities, and adjourn the meeting. And then we can hang around and chat afterwards as you see fit or as you would like. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. And it's been a great evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, and
You're
good
more
job,
than
Frank and
welcome.
Jack.
Thank you.
Yes. And I do want to thank all of the unsung heroes who helped guide me through these rocky waters of the presidency of the MWOTRC. Thank you all very, very much. I really couldn't do it without you. So we will
Thank
stop
you. It was really
recording.
enjoyable.
See if I can get the, let me see if I can stop the recording here.
Wendy, let me stand corrected for a minute. I had answered the chat that she was Wilma. She was not Wilma. She was Betty. Jean Vanderpyle was Wilma.
That's good.
So I apologize for that.
Well, you know, we'll give you one pass for tonight, Frank. So the rest of it, you know,
As for that, 1 month
just
with no BB.
keep it to yourself.